Hey Trunk, thank you so much for joining us. Really excited to dig into kind of what you're building with RYSE, what your motivations are behind it, how you got the idea, and just go really deep into your mind and your entrepreneurial journey. Just to start though, we'd love to introduce yourself and what your company's all about.
So RYSE is a smart home company, and we focus on developing products for motorizing blinds and shades of all types. And I really started this company years ago due to a personal problem I had. I was really just tired of not being able to motorize my window shades. I had to open all of them manually.
I'm trying to wrap my head around the process from saying, hey, there's this pain point in my life, which is that I want to get automated blinds but not have to replace my blinds, to then actually coming up with that device. So did you come up with the design and the engineering behind it?
To be honest, I thought the product existed. So when I went to the market, when I went to the retailers and dealers, I said, hey, I want to buy a motor that I could just put on the window frame and it controls the chains or cords. Very simple concept.
Yeah.
And I asked them no, this product should exist. There's no reason why it shouldn't exist. And when all of them told me that it didn't exist, that was my eureka moment. And that was kind of what led me down the rabbit hole. A lot of entrepreneurs focus on building the product first. But because I came from a finance background, I really just focused on the market opportunity, finding the right assets and key players to build the company around. We had really, really strong early team members that helped build the company and build the product.
I imagine that the first thing you had to do if you were going to build that team was raise funding. I imagine that was quite challenging when you didn't really have an MVP or you just had an idea and you still hadn't validated the market yet. How did you go about that challenge and conquering it?
To get the product to market or to get to the first milestone, which is a functional prototype, we just raised through family and friends. So a lot of family members trusted me, believed in me, invested in the company at the very beginning. And that allowed us to develop our first prototype, which we then took to Indiegogo, launched a crowdfunding campaign, proved market demand. And Indiegogo itself led to a lot of angel investors that saw the campaign and wanted to invest as well. So that was really what took us off at the very early stages.
Once you got that funding and you were able to put that team together, the actual manufacturing of the device, what was that process like?
Big challenge. I think one of the benefits, and people don't realize is that the hardware scene in Toronto, it's very tight-knit. And we ended up just connecting with all the other hardware companies and learning from them, getting introductions to their manufacturers, and really just vetting what was in the industry and what was in the market and what was available. We actually did I would say a 4 to 6 week site visit, visiting various factories across China. Then we flew down to Shenzhen with our hardware team, went to visit a few factories, got quoted, understood how they operated, really looked at the quality, performance, listened to all the pitches before we actually chose a manufacturer to work with. And the first production cycle is the longest. It's not as simple as sending them design, going through tooling, molding it, and producing it. There's a lot of iterations, and you're working closely with the factory. So the factory you choose with can be make or break. You have to be really, really careful who you work with.
So you were able to get that first production run done. How impactful was that equity crowdfunding and that general product crowdfunding round in terms of getting your adoption curve up?
Yeah, so after our Indiegogo launch, we did a series of more family and friends investment, angel investments, some micro VCs, and that really just funded us to get more inventory out. Eventually, because we were a consumer brand at that time, we looked at the crowd. And as you mentioned, we did do an equity crowdfunding campaign or a community round. And that's our funding structure in place over the last couple of years. It's been very interesting, but we've pretty much automated the funding process itself, looking at the crowd, looking at retail investors and even accredited investors, coming up with a unique structure to get them involved, converting our existing customers to be investors and vice versa. So throughout the years, that's what we've been doing to fundraise, raise additional capital to scale. But since our initial family and friends round from day zero all the way to now, we've been through multiple production cycles. We've launched multiple products. Our Gen 2's in the markets. We were able to scale to channels above online into physical retail, which I'm definitely going to touch on a little later. But it's been a very interesting process when it came to fundraising, from product fundraising to equity crowdfunding. And I think once you have a process in place, it does become more automated. And 2-3 years ago, I'd be spending 30, 40, 50% of my time on fundraising. Now it's significantly less because I do have a process in place that's pretty much automated.
Now, I think what you're forgetting there is that the reason why you're able to be so successful in equity crowdfunding and general crowdfunding is because you got a great product. How nervous were you when that first production run went out to those first customers? What was that initial feedback like? Was it just immediate product market fit?
So nothing speaks volumes than sales. Sales, says it all. And we had great sales. We had like no competition when we first launched. We knew, copycats would come eventually, but we had like no competition directly with what we're doing. And we got a ton of sales when we initially launched. However, I will say the challenge that we had was we over-engineered and over-designed Gen 1. So I think a lot of startups fall into this trap, and it's one of those caveats I always recommend, especially with hardware. MVP, minimum viable product that just makes it work. Keep it simple. Remove all the bells and whistles. Like our Gen 1 had a capacitive touch, LED lights. We didn't need any of that. It led to like a lot of production issues and increasing the cost. We reduced our cost of goods from just over $80 to around $40 from Gen 1 to Gen 2. That's a 50% reduction in cost. And the product was more robust, faster, stronger, quieter, a lot more better. So, that's the difference between Gen 1 and Gen 2. You just learn how to improve the quality over time. And this is very important for hardware because everyone thinks, you launch a product that's going to be a home run right away.
With hardware, obviously, it's very difficult to get it right on the first iteration of that product. You saw that with Gen 1 versus Gen 2. You put Gen 2 out. So how did you keep your team aligned with you in that journey?
So first and foremost, all my new team members, they read a book called Build by Tony Fadell. For those that don't know who he is the founder of Nest, started and developed the iPhone and iPod with Steve Jobs. So, very famous entrepreneur in the Valley. And the reason why that book is so compelling to me is because, they raised a lot of money in venture capital, but it took them 3 generations of products before they got into Best Buy. So the reason why I bring this up is because it allows our team members to understand that hardware is a marathon, not a sprint, and it's going to be a long journey. So that's one of the big kind of things I repeat constantly with the team members that, it's not going to be a software kind of success story where you could iterate every 2 weeks and launch a product and acquire new customers like that. It is a slow and steady process, but once you have that solid build, that solid generation, you could then start scaling. And that's what we're doing now with Gen 2, launching into Best Buy retail stores.
When did you know that you were ready to take that next step from e-commerce into brick and mortar? And what were the first steps that you took to actually get into the door with these larger retailers?
Great friend of mine, Jimmy at Nanoleaf, he did the introduction to us to Best Buy, and that's how we got into the Best Buy retail stores. So that was kind of the step into retail. And I think that's a very, very important aspect of a startup. You really have to be able to network and build a community in your space. And we also improved our metrics. For example, our return rates for Gen 1 was hovering around 20-25%, which is surprisingly in line with the market. Yeah. So if you look at smart locks, smart thermostats, smart doorbells, the return rates are actually around 20-25% as well. However, with Gen 2, we're able to reduce the return rates to around 7-8%. So that already shows that the market's accepting this product a lot better. And that's a huge metric for us. We didn't get into Best Buy until about a year in market with Gen 2 to be able to work all the kinks, get our manufacturing in place, and be confident enough to be able to service Best Buy and some of these other retailers.
What's your proudest moment building RYSE been?
Every year as we progress, there's different moments that you should be proud of. Launching into the market, shipping to the customer. We were on Dragon's Den, so getting a deal on Dragon's Den. Big moment for us as well. And then launching the Best Buy is probably the most recent one. And that's great because it's not just selling online. I think it's so much easier for anybody to open a Shopify store and run a few ads and sell online. But being able to be in a global or North American nationally recognized retail store location, huge milestone for us and the team.
What's one piece of advice that you would give to an aspiring entrepreneur?
So I will circle back to the whole MVP aspect. And reiterate the always be testing aspect. I think those are 2 very important hand-in-hand pieces of advice I always give, especially with hardware. Reduce the amount of features, get the product to the market, get feedback right away from customers. And when I say MVP, I don't mean like launch a bad product. I mean just launch a product with limited features and just get feedback. Improve on that because you're going to learn a lot from that. And the other element, always be testing. Again, not just dealing with the R&D aspect, dealing with the marketing and the sales as well.
Trung, thank you again for joining us. This was an awesome conversation. I loved getting really deep into the whole journey of you building RYSE. You've had a ton of success. I'm sure you're going to have lots more. I really do believe in your vision, and I'm super excited that you were able to join us today. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Thank you.